All right, let's talk Olympics. Let's not put you two.
I can't believe you just hit me with that. So why aren't you in Tokyo? I've been to back-to-back weddings the last 2 days.
That's no excuse.
I felt like grabbing the microphone and saying to everyone, please, no one ask me why I'm not at the Olympic Games.
Your country needs you, Peter. If you didn't know, Peter has won a gold medal at the Olympics for shooting, London 2012. Tiddlywinks for double trap clay pigeon shooting, and was the author of The Dad Moment on BBC television, which is terrific. Matthew, almost as good, but
somewhere near.
But one of our country's top shots. So let's talk about what they're going through right now. We have the famous 5 over there at the moment. Well, now the famous 4 because Amber's had to pull out because of COVID. So tell me, let's start with you, Peter. What are they going through in Tokyo at the moment with the trap disciplines coming up soon? I think on Wednesday.
I think just to rewind for a second, they're shooting Skeet as we speak, and so Amber, had she not contracted COVID, would have done day 1 today. She would have shot her 75 targets. There's an Italian woman who has just shot the whole lot, so she's 75 out of 75. Amber, I had down as a strong favourite to win a medal. You have to understand, in this instance, once you're actually at the Olympic Games, it's very, very difficult to get there. And that's not sort of blowing hot air at my bum. It's just saying that you have to spend hours and hours and hours preparing for that moment, qualifying for that moment. Once you're there, it really is anybody's game. It's the best of the best. And I really had Amber down as a genuine medal contender, and it's just tragic for her, for Team GB, that she's not there. Moving into trap, and to answer your question, the guys will be nervous. They'll be very nervous. They're days away. They start qualification on Wednesday. They'll do what's known as official training the day before, which means they'll shoot 3 rounds of 25 targets. 2 shots, 1 shot, it's irrelevant. You can shoot as much or as little as you want. You don't even have to shoot it. And that will be as close to qualification as you can get, the real deal, essentially. And the pressure will be mounting. They'll have backed off media engagements by now. They'll be trying to stay well away from everybody. The big fear I know at the moment, I've spoken to a few athletes out there, is COVID. They do not want to get COVID. They're getting lateral flow tests once, if not twice a day, depending on where they are in competition. And everyone is absolutely bricking it. Bricking it because they're about to compete at the biggest stage in their careers, and at the same time, there's COVID still looming over them. And in Amber's case, she didn't even know that she was ill. So it's really scary. But yeah, these guys really are set to do some damage. I'm especially excited about good old Matt. He's world and European champion.
Holly.
Yeah. And I know Matt wants to talk a little bit about the Skeet. He's a Skeet shooter. I'm trying to persuade him to shoot trap. I've moved from double trap to trap. And he'll talk a little bit about rifle as well, which I know absolutely nothing about.
Well, I want to actually, Matt, if I may ask you first of all, because you've competed at this level in the past.
Yes.
In your experience, you're pointing for, actually in this case, 5 years of your life, maybe longer, at a single day.
Yeah.
What can possibly go wrong?
Well, yes, is it. We were just discussing this before we come on, and it goes back even further than that. So realistically, you're looking at, we all tend to plan our routines around the whole 4-year Olympic cycle. And that's at the basis that you're already in the Great Britain team, which in itself can take a decade on its own. So for a lot of these people, if their first time at Olympic Games, this can be 10, 20 years in the making. And to boil it all down to one day is extreme.
It's unkind.
It is. There's no warming up to it like some of the other sports, in the tennis and other events.
No, but that's what's so wonderful about it, right? It's the fact that you're. It's nuts. I was just saying backstage that I would never, ever try and persuade someone to shoot at the Olympics because, in fact, take up any Olympic sport, and I know that's not what I'm supposed to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's just nuts. You spend your life. My earliest memory is trying to win an Olympic gold medal. And then you spend, years, hours, just training day in, day out, traveling, giving up on birthdays, funerals, weddings for this one moment. And then, you might have a headache. Shooting man's worst enemy, a headache, and that can blow your chances. And
it is a sort of madness, isn't it? And I think this sort of the hand-eye coordination sports, particularly shooting and stuff as well, because you're not pushing yourself to any kind of physical limit. When it comes to your 100 meters with the Usain Bolts and stuff, you could physically measure who was the fastest. he had run a speed and a time that no one had ever matched. Whereas, like Peter was saying, when you get to the Olympic Games, it is the absolute cream of the crop. Half the world's best shooters don't even qualify. Anybody can win that Olympic medal on the day. And the tiniest little thing, like say, wake up not feeling particularly great, and your donkey's years of preparation, you could feel it slipping away. And the guys
that is also why it's so wonderful, right?
It is.
Having said it's rubbish, it is incredible. I mean,
it's like talking to a couple of addicts.
it is an addiction. There's no doubt.
Addicted to the punishment of shooting.
Yeah. If you're not addicted to the process, and then if you're not absolutely mad for it, then you'll never make it to that far end of the sport. You'll never make it to the top unless you're absolutely obsessed.
Right, Peter, I want to come back to how we redesigned the Olympics because we've got a lovely half an hour to chat here. But Matt, you are a skeet shooter. I think people understand trap shooting. Up it goes.
Previously, double trap with it. I struggle to label myself as a skeet shooter these days.
We're going to try and label you that because we still want you to be one of our hopes. We understand rifle shooting. We understand target shooting. Gravel bellies and all that.
Yeah.
Just explain if anybody's going to watch it later on today, or the highlights. Just explain skeet shooting. How does it work for anybody who doesn't know?
So Olympic skeet. Basically the same as English skeet, but you have on the same layout, but much faster targets. You have to start with your gun down on your hip. You have a 0 to 3 second delay from when you call for the target.
Where do the clays come from?
So they're coming from, you have a high tower and a low tower, and you have a semicircle of 7 stations, then with an 8th station in the middle, and you shoot a series of targets from those stations, which end up with 25, same as Olympic trap. So they'll be shooting out of 125 targets. In the Olympic Games, the events are split into 2 days, so 75 day 1 and then 25 day 2 plus the final.
And let's just commiserate with Amber for a second. Amber Hill, a real possible medal hope. Yeah. She did incredibly well recently, didn't she? Do you recall her score?
She's been amazing. Like I believe, like Peter, I think, with no disrespect to any of the other guys, because they're all fantastic, I think Amber was our strongest possibility of a medal of any colour. The other guys have all got it in them, no doubt about it. Like you say, Matt Caldholly is world and European champion. In terms of skeet, Amber is and will be for a very long time. It's pure class, and I think she's got it within her, particularly with her age, to be Great Britain's far and away most decorated international shooter. I think
she's lucky enough to be the youngest member of the team, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. I mean, I think if you'd have asked her, in all honesty, when she qualified for Rio, if that was a serious target for her, I think that probably came sooner than she expected. But she was going into this Olympic Games as world number 1, won multiple World Cups and medalled in lots of others, force to be reckoned with, and all the other competitors will be extremely relieved she's not there.
I bet they will. I mean, it must have was amazing news to the Italians, the Australians.
They'll be loving it, sadly.
Yeah, it is. That it is. I mean, I was talking to you, Peter, last week, and you were saying the other great skeet shooter of the moment, Kim Rhodes, not there.
Yeah, that. A lot of shooters, like everyone here, has probably never heard of the name Kimberly Rhodes, right? I mean, she is the greatest shot who has ever graced this planet.
Statistically, and not just in shooting, in terms of Olympic history.
There are people shouting George Digweed here.
We can only talk Olympics, can't we?
No. I mean, George
goes further.
George is phenomenal. Richard Folds is phenomenal. In fact, I don't know George particularly well. I've known Richard extremely well. I've travelled the world with him, shot against him, in a team with him. He's probably the most naturally gifted shooter I've ever come across. He's sort of able to pick up a stick, point it in the general direction of a clay, and it breaks. And his natural gift with a weapon is insane. I don't have that same natural gift. I have to work that as a result that little bit harder. I'm not saying he doesn't work hard. I just have to work harder than him, and I have to work harder than a lot of people. And that's, I guess, when I'm asked to talk to school kids about whether you want to be an Olympian or not, getting aside from the fact that I think it's nuts, it is about work. It's about working harder than anyone else. If you really do believe this is what you want to do. Now, Kimberly combines both natural talent and a work rate. Now, her work rate, just to give you an example, I mean, I used to shoot a lot. I was renowned within the sort of Olympic double trap scene as shooting more than most. I'd shoot up to 1,200, 1,500 clays a day, every day. I'd have 1 month on, 1 day off. And so you'd be shooting 4 weeks solidly in the Middle East. You'd have 1 full day off to recoup. And if you had to patch yourself back together again, I used to bleed a lot from my shoulder and my face and my hands. I'd have lots of calluses. And that was pretty extreme, right? I mean, I'm not sort of the size of George Digweed, for example. I can't take the recoil, so I had a lot of problems. I will go on to have problems as a result. Kim is a bigger girl. She shoots easily 1,000 a day, every day. She has her own range. She shoots Olympic skeet. She shot double trap before that. She won Olympic gold medal in double trap. In fact, she may have won two Olympic gold medals in double trap.
Yeah, she did. She won a bronze and gold in doubles.
She then changed into skeet, and she is the only woman capable at the moment of beating the men. She is truly frightening. She is an extraordinary talent.
Now you're bordering on sexism. We should can we just nail this one down, because skeet is very, very peculiar. And I mean, shooting itself has always struck me as the most wonderful sport, because everybody should compete against each other. Now, I did talk about this with Peter before, so I'm going to ask him again. Take me back to 1992 and the Chinese lady shooter.
So this really got my goat, right? So double trap, both Matt and I met shooting double trap. I went on to win Olympic gold medal. It was an amazing experience, and I'm obviously very thankful for it. But I have always been a champion for, equality. And at the moment, Thomas Bach, who has been banging that drum for some time now, lost sight many, many years ago. In fact, it wasn't on his watch, but shooting as a result, there is no major attribute as to whether you're a man or you're a woman. Back in the day, a Chinese athlete shot 200 out of 200, won the Olympic Games, beat all the men, and then ended up knocking one of the Italian team off the podium, so 3rd to 4th. The Italians at the time were very much in charge of the ISSF, that's the International Shooting Sports Federation. They didn't like that very much. In fact, it was pretty much run by the mafia back then. So they decided after that to divide men and women. So say, women will shoot 75 targets, because we don't want them shooting the same number as men, because then they can compare the scores. Men will shoot 125. And so she did more damage by beating everybody, as a woman, than had she sort of, paled into insignificance.
It is blindingly sexist by modern standards, but then again, you did just say that Kimberly Rhodes could even beat the men in a slightly kind of white and male way, if I may say. So could you just qualify that statement?
Yeah, okay. So as a result of that, I think there was a retrograde step within women's shooting. When they segregated it, women at that point and men had competed alongside one another and had accepted that you would compete alongside one another. And now, of course, we accept that there are sort of two different levels within shooting. There aren't two different levels within shooting. Kimberly Rhodes is quite capable of beating the men are quite capable of beating her. And so when I speak to women about, being able to compete, or should they want to compete against men, most of them say, no, we don't shoot quite as well, and you're taking a medal from me, and you're, sort of despised by the women on the international stage. And that's not what it's about. It's about, shooting. If we want to have shooting in the Olympic Games going forwards, we need to be progressive. And we're not. We're so archaic. We're so stupid. I just find it so infuriating.
And sadly, we were. Shooting was a long way ahead of most Olympic sports back in the 90s, with men and women competing alongside each other. But Peter's dead right. That move in the end has proven to be, it's caused lots of problems further down the line, hasn't it, around the separation of different events, which has then caused almost too many shooting events, and which ended up, being the reason we lost double trap. We lost our event because there were too many events because they'd separated it off. If you look at the results from London, 2 women would have made men's finals in the London Olympic Games and quite possibly would have come away with medals: Kimberly Rhodes and Jessica Rossi. There is no reason that women can't compete at the same level. But again, hate keep saying Peter's right, but it's come down to the fact that
I am right.
Well, we're spending a happy time. We're redesigning the Olympic Games very slowly over half an hour. By the time we finished, the Olympic Committee better tremble, because we
now have a whole series that everyone that's competing now in women's Olympic shooting has never known a point when men and women competed alongside each other. So now they don't want it, which is a pity, because I believe it could be a better way forward.
Now, I want to bring it back to this Olympics briefly before we come up with our next idea for what the Olympic Committee should do. The Olympic trap. Peter, can you explain to me what that is, what you have to do, and why our lot are in with a chance of finaling?
Okay, so you stand within a square, a painted square, and you have generally an over and under shotgun, and you have one clay released. You can fire both barrels at that clay. It's known as being full use of the gun. Doesn't matter whether you shoot every single clay with your second barrel or your first. It's kills count, essentially. You get 25 clays released, but when you bring that back, you shoot one at a time. You don't know where it's going. It has a sort of 90-degree variation from 3 traps in the ground in front of you. You shoot one, and you move. So you keep shooting and moving, keep shooting and moving, and keep shooting and moving. Shoot 25 clays. Now, you shoot in, as I said, rounds of 25. You would generally, at the Olympics, it's slightly different. The Olympics is like no other competition. You'll have probably about an hour and 20-minute break before you shoot your next round. Internationally, there's many more competitors. You would have sometimes even a 4-hour, 5-hour window before your next round. It can be a very long day. The Olympics is much more condensed. Generally, there's a crowd, oohing and ahhing. Bearing in mind, I'd never competed in front of anybody. I did actually, that's a lie. I competed in front of a few, maybe a couple of hundred people in America. And that's really only because there was 2 Americans in the final with me, and they were hugely, partisan. And then I competed in front of thousands of people, at home in London. And that was a very, very special experience, I've got to say. But these guys and girls won't have experienced that. And they won't experience that. That's what's so sad. In a way, I think it might actually play to their advantage because they won't have been used to competing in front of a crowd, and so they won't have to get used to that. They won't have to sort of get their head around it. They'll shoot their rounds of 25, and like Matt said with Skeet, they'll shoot 3 rounds on day 1, which is going to be Wednesday. They'll then shoot 2 further rounds in the morning on Thursday morning, and then a final. So the competition over the last 4 years will have been whittled down from thousands and thousands and thousands in every country. Bear in mind, China's Olympic budget is bigger than every other country combined. China, shooting is massive in China.
You started that guns and shooting are actually banned in China, and yet it is massive.
It is massive. It's massive because shooting at one point, I don't think it's quite the case now, a few Olympic cycles ago, shooting was the 3rd largest medal sport in the Olympic calendar. China looked at it and said, this is great. The Americans, the Brits, a lot of the European nations, Russians, aren't funding it appropriately. So if we put billions of yuan behind shooting and build incredible facilities all across China, we can start to compete for medals. So it's no surprise the first medal at the Olympics is always a rifle medal. It was won by China. And it will always be won by China because they spend so much money. They have it is, from my perspective, I was lucky enough to be invited out there before London and after London to come and see their facilities, talk to them, try and help them and work with them. And I was my mind was blown. It is so exciting to see someone doing it properly.
Well, when I've spoken to Pragmatic, which has a stand here in the past, they make clay pigeon traps, and I've asked them about where they're selling their clay pigeon traps. They say China dwarfs the rest of the export market. I mean, there are generals in the Chinese army who like a clay pigeon layout as their sort of back garden thing. There are grounds opening up to encourage these new kids along. It's extraordinary. The crowd, Matt, I talked to Peter a little bit about last week, and he was very eloquent about how the crowd affects you when you're shooting. How does it affect you?
I think it depends if you're shooting good or bad. When you're shooting well, you feel like that the crowd will get behind you. They're generally wherever you are in the world, except a few partisan people. It's because it was Pete, really, the Americans.
Well, Peter said they cheered when he missed something.
Yeah, we all did that. No, if you're shooting well, it feels like the wind in your sails, and it gets your blood pumping and can really help you focus. If you're shooting poorly, you just the crowd, you can feel you feel bad, you feel slightly embarrassed, and you want the ground to open up and disappear and swallow you away. You'd like to think, regardless of the situation, around the Olympics, there will be a few people here and there getting behind the shooters. That it should be a positive thing for them. There's so many positives for them to take being on that stage that, and you've got to be so mentally strong anyway to get to that level that you'd like to think that whatever that situation is, they'll be able to handle it.
Well, everything's against them. They're a long way from home. I mean, there isn't going to be a crowd beyond officials, is there? At this
I don't
Olympics?
think so. Other than officials and the other team members will be there, I imagine.
Peter, I know you hate talking about 2012. It was a terrible year for you. Only the gold medal. But what was your sense of home team advantage on that day?
There was actually very little. Team GB were very, very keen, or LOCOG, the organising committee, were really keen that we, Team GB, shouldn't have an advantage, which I think is insane. We struggled to get a specific tent. So at the back of the Olympic shooting facility at Woolwich, there's a whole host of small and large tents, about the same size as this, in fact, would be the biggest tent. And there are benches inside that, and you sort of grab a bench. And there is a bit of a bun fight day one when they open up the gates, and everyone runs in and they start writing all over the benches where they're from. We thought we might get a sort of quiet tent at the back. We did eventually get that, but it just shows you that we struggled to get a small tent, a third of the size of this, as our home advantage. There was no home advantage. And to give you an example, I was sent out to Beijing to prepare for 2012, a thing called Ambition 2012. And the Chinese athletes had been shooting for 6 months solidly on the Beijing ranges before any other international athlete was allowed in. I got no extra training on the London ranges. So day one, when I had the Maltese team, the Russian team, the American team, I got as much training as them.
And were they trying to psych you out all the time as well?
Yeah, so it is strange. I mean, I'm sure you'd have all heard before many times on BBC website, athletes saying, well, I compete alongside these people every day, all day anyway. But the Olympics is different. It is just so different because it's every 4 years and it's so goddamn hard to qualify for. And anything can go wrong. As I said already, you can be ill, you can stub your toe, you can break your arm, you can have a headache, whatever that may be. People are pretty nasty. I went into that final. I was lucky I had a 3-target lead. I saw the side of people that I'd never seen before, friends who were friends, who are no longer friends, who did things that I think are just sadly regrettable. My attitude towards sport is maybe slightly different to some other people's. I want to push myself to be the absolute best I can be. And if I'm shooting against Matt, I want to beat him. I want to beat everybody. I want to win. That's why I'm there. But at the same time, I want everyone else to shoot as well as they possibly can, and I still want to beat them. And so I don't ever want a situation where I'm having to put people off in order to try and beat them. I want to get the best out of myself, and I just hope on that day that's going to be that little bit better than everyone else. So I've never been used to backbiting, snides, comments about this, that, and the other on ranges. And bear in mind, the referees are quite away from you. You are wearing earmuffs. I actually wear double earmuffs for this very reason. I was aware this might happen. I was told by my coach this might happen. So I wear the custom molded earplugs and the big sort of blockers on top. And people say silly things, and as I said, I wish they hadn't, but they do. And that's life, I guess. So maybe I shouldn't complain about it. It is the Olympics. It's the pinnacle. And if you want to win, you have to push yourself. And a lot of those guys that were in that Olympics with me have never competed again. Never competed before.
And well done then for learning your language to be rude to you in English as well. Now, London 2012, we are going to get into redesigning the Olympics. In the world of shooting, you both shot double trap. And since that time, we've had the frankly controversial decision to remove an entire sport from the Olympics.
Three events.
Three events. Yeah. Okay, Matt, can you just tell me the history of that? Tell me what happened, and then we'll draw some conclusions from it.
So the long and the short of it is, because of the way Olympic shooting has changed over the years, we found ourselves in an odd situation where we had 3 events, one in pistol, one in rifle, one in shotgun, that didn't have female participation. So back when me and Pete started shooting double trap, ladies were still shooting it. And the ISSF, in their wisdom, removed it after Athens. Is that correct? Yeah. And 50-meter rifle had the same. Although 50-meter rifle is the most popular shooting event in the entire world, as far as competitive shooting goes, it didn't have a female category in the Olympic Games. And it was the same with 50-meter pistol. So on the reasons for the RSF for trying to become more inclusive with female participation, the 3 male-only events then got removed and got replaced by mixed team events. But sadly, the reason they ended up having to do that was purely the RSSF's own fault for not addressing the subject sooner. After Beijing, or just prior to Beijing, the IOC the International Olympic Committee, told the ISSF, you need to sort your events out because by 2016, we want there to be complete 50-50 inclusion, male, female, equal numbers of athletes, equal numbers of events. The RSSF, because it's run by
idiots.
Idiots. Too many old men with not enough, looking to the future.
He used to be so careful. He'd never criticise enemy.
Bear in mind, back in the day when I was paid to shoot by British Shooting, you have to sign lots of NDAs and you have to sign your life away. So I couldn't say anything.
Politically correct.
I remember I got really, really rollocked before 2012 because I was coming out in my support for game shooting. And I was hauled over the coals and said if I ever mention game shooting again, they'll revoke my Olympic accreditation and I wouldn't get to compete. So you get very controlled as athletes as what you can or can't say. I'm no longer paid by British Shooting, so I can say whatever I want, and I can tell them if I think they're dicks, they're dicks. As simple as that.
Matt, go back.
So basically, in the end, the IOC turned round to the ISSF, and this was sadly for us. This was at the this all came out at the Olympic test event. So we were at the World Cup in Rio. In the April, preparing for the Olympic Games 2 or 3 months later. And the IOC said, look, if you're not going to do this yourself, we'll do it for you. So they then panicked, said, all right, we'll remove these 3 events. And that's sadly how it came about. There was no real...
It was the biggest mistake the ISSF
shocking mistake. Yeah.
has ever made.
Okay, well, yes, it was a mistake. I mean, it happened. And I remember at the time just how kind of destructive it was for the people involved in those disciplines. But we have to look ahead. We have other shooting sports emerging on the horizon. We can say shooting is going to change. Target sprint is now being talked about as a thing now, where you have an air gun and you run a bit like biathlon, but without skis. So, shooting has a possibly great future.
Well, again, we were talking about this the other day. So when the event double trap got removed for trap mixed team, in terms of Olympic clay target shooting, Olympic trap is the most popular. It's participated in the most countries. So you almost couldn't argue with the fact that they've brought another event to Olympic trap to include men and women. Fantastic. They've now just decided for the next Olympic Games, so Paris 2024, they're not now going to have trap mixed team. They're now changing it to skeet. They don't seem to be able to leave it alone. I think the way they run the team events now and the mixed team event is actually quite good, isn't it? It's quite entertaining. It's not as entertaining as double trap was, but they seem to have found a decent formula for it. And yet they seem to have this self-sabotage mode they've gone into, and now they're removing it for a skeet mixed team. That's fine. Olympic skeet's great. It's not as big an event as Olympic trap. So I can't understand this next move they've made. I just can't see the benefit.
Peter, is shooting an itch they just want to keep scratching?
And the reason I think they're all idiots, I'll rephrase, is because they had an amazing opportunity. And you could easily say, okay, I shot double trap, I coached double trap, and then it was removed from the Olympics. What they had in double trap was an amazingly visual... it was wonderful to watch, is really what I'm trying to get at. And now you're trying to watch skeet and trap on TV, and it's very, very difficult. I love it. I absolutely love it. And as a result, I'll persevere. But a lot of other people won't. And I think what they had in that moment was an opportunity to, as we've talked about already, to sort of open the floodgates, allow men and women to compete together, to say that we won't have these separate classifications. The men and women will shoot the same number of targets over the same number of days, and the winner will be the winner. And so that's what I was pushing for when I had heard that they were considering changing the format. I think that would have been a very exciting prospect. It would have been bear in mind, the only other Olympic sport where men and women compete together is in the equestrian sports. And I just don't understand why we can't do the same in shooting. And my fear is, and this is where I get really rather angry and I'm a bit more outspoken than I used to be, is that Olympic shooting is probably the easiest face of shooting. It's the easiest way for us as a community to promote our sport to the masses in a really positive way, and show that amazing thing that is shooting to the world. And my fear is that if we keep toying with it and we keep sort of messing around with it and we don't show it in the full light that it deserves, it will go, and we won't have Olympic shooting in the future. It will be something that we'll be talking about when I'm old and grey and saying, wasn't it wonderful back in the day?
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen. Matthew French, Peter Wilson, great medal hosts of the future. Thank you very much for joining me here today.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you very much.